Hello, hello, hello. I'm back for another couple of hours to stream panel. Open panel Saturday night. What y'all up to? I worked today. I work again tomorrow. I work Monday. I work the day after that. But in between the working, the streaming continues. Hey, Mike. What's up? Just doing a open panel. I'm gonna look at the news and all that other stuff. It seems like not much going. I mean, it seems like stuff going on in the world, but it's not new stuff. It's the same old. Pope Francis. Oh, wasn't he in the hospital like a week ago? Well, he's old. Um, Israel strikes Lebanon after first rocket attack since ceasefire. That's not anything new. Shooting at a park in New Mexico. What? There's like two or three or four people from here that are from New Mexico. All right, let me look at this. Mass shooting in New Mexico. All right, this is the news as far as I'm concerned. Where? Las Cruces. Two 19-year-old men and one 16-year-old boy died during a shooting. There was an altercation between two groups of people. So is that a gang? Two groups of people having an altercation with guns? That doesn't sound like normal citizens. That sounds like a gang. What kind of groups of people are going to be carrying guns around shooting at each other? Why don't they just come out and say that? There had been ill will between the two groups prior to the car show. All right, well, I'm not mad at you, Mike. Oh yeah, I did see that George Foreman died. I saw that this morning. Yeah. This but his grill lives on. Hopefully. Or does it? Does anyone use the George Foreman grill anymore? We had one growing up. My brother had one. And I remember he would cook chicken in it. He had these frozen chicken cutlets. And he would put them in the grill and press it down and make cook them and then make a sandwich with them. They were good for that. They shoot lightning. They barely shoot sparks anymore. You have a George Foreman? What do you use it for? Stop. That's my rib. Hey, Browns, what's up? So, does that mean your phone doesn't work anymore or works sporadically? It, oh, you haven't used it in years? It was really kind of easy and convenient for people like me that can't cook at all. I could put shit in the grill. Oh, and was it grilled cheese? Some kind of cheese, something with bread that they would mash in there and cook too. I think maybe it was grilled cheese. I guess it's grilled cheese. It's a George Foreman grill. So if you're putting cheese in there, I guess it's grilling it. You used to order them off the TV. They would have the infomercials that would sell them, and people would order them off the TV. You think it's your connection or the device itself? It seems like a connection issue because it shows you backstage, but you don't fully connect where I can add you to the stage. So it kind of freezes you with your name and your avatar, but there's no actual connection. But speaking of connection, we have this guy whose bedtime it's probably way past, but we're gonna hear from him anyway.
Yeah, you were a bit later than
I
you said. You know?
I knew you were gonna say something. I was. I had some stuff to do around the house, and I ended up needing more downtime than I anticipated.
Yeah, well, it's in 8 minutes. It's 1 a.m. So
Oh Lord!
I
Wow.
I should not have stayed up, but I did because I got into a rabbit hole of just reading basically the Constitution of Norway, comparing the original 1814 version with the current version. And so I've just been doing that for like 2 hours, waiting for you. And
Oh my
I
God! You
considered
stayed
going
up
to
for
sleep.
this. What? Well, let's maximize this moment then, and make the most of it before
Yeah.
you have to go to
Uh,
sleep. Do you want to talk about what you learned or something else?
well, I can just talk about it generally because, like, I began with just, as you do, just scrolling on Twitter, a very unhealthy habit, I might add, but
What's wrong with
you know,
that?
it's
I,
it
I,
takes my time, and I don't feel like
yeah,
I
but
get
there's
that time's
something
worth.
that's you're getting some kind of payoff, or you wouldn't keep doing it. You're getting some kind of enrichment from it.
Yeah, but I don't, I think that's a very animalistic, just pure dopamine. I don't get any. I get stuff of value, I do, but not proportional to the amount of time it sucks
Oh,
out.
maybe you're not following the people that will give you value.
Yeah, and that is a legitimate criticism. However, so I was just scrolling as you do, and since it's Norwegian election this autumn, a few people are already talking about it, and so I found a few uh, early voting sites. People just vote what they want to vote, so you can compare and stuff. And under there, I began reading the various, or I planned on beginning to read the various party platforms because we have a lot of parties. We have,
Right. Like a whole
yeah,
spectrum.
exactly. Although I already know the positions of most of the main parties. So I was reading into the lesser ones. So, like for example, party the Alliance, which is basically a guy cosplaying being Trump. Although, in my opinion, he's a bit wilder. Like the previous election cycle, he went to Oslo Down Street, like I think even in front of the Storting, so in front of like the Parliament, in front of Congress, he went there with a big ass sword and did his sort of speech and everything.
Is that the
Vote me
Viking
to get this.
candidate you were telling us about?
I may have mentioned him before. He's not Viking at all. He's basically American
Oh,
by his party platforms. But the sword, that is kind of cool. I like that a politician just comes out with a big ass sword, and that's like a big. He only got like 2,000 votes though in the entirety of Norway. So clearly the sword didn't work.
it's not resonating
Yeah, well,
with the
people
Nords.
even the people who find him funny agree that he's an American idiot. Not American, but like his politics are just importing American stuff to a country which is not compatible with it.
Oh,
And so
that's a nice way of saying it.
he's just a curiosity. But the other sort of minor parties, you have honestly, the one I was most looking forward to and I was considering to vote for was the industry and that word I can't even translate into English. It's such a and the industry party basically their main like, but they had a schism. Like the leader, they were looking to get an actual good amount of votes, enough to get seats in parliament, but then they had an internal schism because apparently and the party leader was very authoritarian, and he centralized the party too much, and so people the sort of party body kicked him out, and he formed his own splinter party, and so the whole party split in two. And it seems the big issue was basically the culture war. The new party with actually I don't know which side. I don't know if it was the authoritarian leader who was on the left side of the culture war, and party on the right or opposite. It doesn't really matter. That party is basically dead now, or the two parties, because they could have gotten like 4%, which is what you need to get seats in parliament. You need a minimum of 4%, but now it's split, and so they won't reach that. And there's no shot of reaching that, and so people won't vote for it. But they were someone I actually wanted to vote for. They seemed interesting. I was very hopeful, and then they splinter up. And
Wokeness is splitting everything. I can't think of a single group that hasn't been fractured by wokeness.
exactly, and all the other sort of minor parties, there's two categories of minor parties on the right. There's American import parties, or there's splinter parties that sort of like the fundamental policies of some of the mainstream parties, but they are anti-globalist, anti-woke, and that stuff. And that's the minority belief, so they all splinter away from the main. So, for example, the biggest minority party now, on the right, at least, because some of the mainstream parties on the left, they are now shrinking so much they might be considered minority parties again, which I'm hoping for. Down with the Greens and down with. Actually, it would be sad if Norway's oldest party became a minority party for the first time in like 130 years. But that might happen. But I digress. So where were I? So all these minority parties on the right, they all splinter away from the more mainstream sides. For example, the current leader of the Norwegian Democrats, which is the biggest minority party, it's a mix of an American import party and like a domestic party, because the fundamental stuff is still sort of domestic Norwegian, but they have imported a lot of stuff. But they are much better at still being Norwegian instead of looking American, because that's an instant loss. If your party feels American, then nobody wants to vote for
The
you.
Norwegians look down on us that much?
Well, it's not like. Well, yeah, it is like that actually. It is kind of like that, but it's also. Do you want? If you have two alternatives, you have conservative and you
I
have
think that's
Norwegian
cool.
Democrats.
The Canadians
Uh,
do
the,
the same thing.
the conservatives, they are much more. They are more of an import party, whilst Norwegian Democrats, they are an offshoot of a mainstream Norwegian party that has taken in stuff from like the more American side, and so it's very easy to see which one most people like. In addition to conservative being too right wing for even the hard righters. And I don't mean that in a Nazi sense. I mean that in a libertarianism sense. Um, but yeah, so but there's is there a, well, I mentioned the alliance, but they are a joke party. You have the pirate party, which is basically just libertarians but digital. Like they are also kind of a joke party, but that it gets some amount of votes, but never enough to actually get into parliament. But that's something I really hope for, because the leader of the Norwegian Democrats, he has been vocal with the idea of running for with a what do you call it? You call it when two parties they run together as one. They have
Like a
a unite.
coalition? Or no?
No. A coalition happens afterward. They have a united list, I suppose, because you vote for a list of candidates. That's
Oh.
basically what a party is. And so they go as a united list, but then in parliament they can split up the votes as they like. And so that's what the leader of the Norwegian Democrats has proposed, because so long as they can reach 4%, they get, I think, 8 seats in parliament that they can then distribute based on proportions inside. And so it would allow all of these minor parties to actually get a say. Because, like me personally, I would hope that, because I'm not that far right to be on the level of the Norwegian Democrats or the conservatives, but I am further right than the most mainstream right wing party, and so I would like some level of minor right wing participation that can pull the more mainstream right to that in that direction. And so I really hope they get this um, united party list. However, there's no response from many of the other minor leaders, which, I mean, there's a lot of arrogance in the minor parties. They all
Yeah,
want
the
to be king
Norwegians
of
do
their own
seem to
stuff.
be an arrogant people.
Yeah, paradoxically, even because main cultural tenet is this: don't stand out, don't believe you are anything. But that besides the point. Like every minor party, they usually implode due to leadership contests and big dick energy and competition and everything, which just ruins it. Like the mainstream parties are the ones that have survived uh, this fight, because you
Well,
don't
how
get
did how
many.
did all of this lead to the Constitution?
Oh, right. So I was reading the party program of the Norwegian Democrats, and I got the thought that this reminds me of America, and then that made me think about the Constitution, and like I have never actually read my own laws. Like I of course from time to time, if there's a specific issue, I have searched up and found a appropriate law that talks about this and whatever, but I have never actually sat down and just read what are the first paragraphs.
How
What is
how long is your Constitution?
the currently wait, let me
Because ours is
currently
like a
there
few pages.
is 121 paragraphs.
Oh, paragraph. Okay,
Uh,
that's not too bad.
yeah, yeah, but one paragraph is like one law. So, for example, paragraph 120A, the Norwegian bank is the country's central bank, or paragraph 120, the Norwegian flag and form and color is decided by law. Uh, that's more mundane. But then, for example, paragraph, let's see, well, number one is quite boring because it's just Norway is a free and sovereign country. But paragraph two, for example, is the foundational values remain the Christian and humanistic inheritance. This constitution must secure democracy, the right of the rule of law, and the human rights. Like that. That's paragraph two, for example. Um, but it's the one that has probably been changed the most, because the original version is that the evangelical Lutheran church or religion remains the official religion of the state.
That was my next
Um,
question. If there's an official state religion in Norway.
oh, I muted you there. No, not anymore. But there was up until recently, and it was the Norwegian Lutheran Church, but it was abolished, or not abolished, but it was put on equal footing with in practice it was put on equal footing with other religious societies like a few decades ago. But I think it's in the past, in the 2000s, that it's officially been equalized, and that's actually a point of annoyance for me and a lot on the right, is the sort of almost humiliating way the ruling coalition did it, because this was a left-wing coalition, obviously, that did this. And the king, he's supposed to be symbolic, ceremonial. He very rarely goes against the government. He rarely speaks his mind, as he should. He's a king. He's not a private citizen in that sense. And so, but he had one plea to the parliament, is that can I remain as the head of the Norwegian church for the rest of my life, because that's the official position of the king. They are still, interestingly enough, even though there's no legal state church, the king is still legally obligated to be a Lutheran. And so there's sort of a
How can you force someone to be you don't?
Well, if he doesn't
Like you
want
can't
to do
control
that, he
what goes
doesn't
on
have
in
to be
his
king.
head and his heart and what he actually believes. So all he would be doing is professing to be a Lutheran, but you can't
Yeah,
guarantee
but
that's what he actually is internally.
well, then he's not the king. Then he
But
must resign. The
no, that
king
he could
comes with
lie. He
duties and
could say, "Yeah,
obligations.
okay, I'm
Yeah,
Lutheran," but not really
yeah,
be
sure.
Lutheran. But there would be no way for the law to enforce that.
Yeah, but that high trust societies, Jeff. You resign if you cannot fit the position, and if you cannot live up to your duties
But who's
from
gonna
the
resign? No one's gonna resign from king just because they don't want to be a religion anymore.
well,
So they're gonna fake it. They're gonna lie. They're
yeah,
gonna say, "Yes, I'm hardcore. Go Lutheran, Luther."
yeah. Well, as long as he functions like a Lutheran, that's the most important part to the Norwegian state. So long as he does the functions of a king, that's more important than if he lives and believes like a king. But either way, back to the story. So he was rejected by the parliament in remaining the head of the church. Like I don't know if he has had any more requests, but I think that's his like one of the only requests he has ever done in like his 30-year tenure as king to the parliament is that can I just remain the head of the church for the rest of my life, until I die. And he's old. He was old at that point already, but they said no because, of course. But yeah, I think it would have been much smoother with the Christian community, even though that's a pretty small community. Like the people actually care about the institutions of the church that much. But like it would have been smoother if they just, okay, yeah, at his death, it will be equalized. We'll keep it in as it is until he dies and stops being the head. But no, they had to do it like they did. Um, but yeah. Uh,
Well, do you support the change that like having no state religion, or do you secretly wish everybody was Lutheran? Hello, aguacate.
Well, I'm not Lutheran. I'm not Christian, but I do like the Christian foundation of my society. But honestly, I really like. I just wish the state would actually uphold the second paragraph that the foundation of the values of the Norwegian state is our Christian and humanistic inheritance.
But if
Like I
without spelling out what those values are, how
yes,
like you could make it mean anything.
exactly. That is the big issue. So I
What
just
what are what are Christian values anyway? I'm gonna ask the AI. If the AI
well,
can't tell us, nobody can, and we're doomed.
look at modern Western society. I think that's a pretty good answer. Like individual liberty. That's
That's a
uh,
Christian value.
well, depends on who you ask. I would say it's a
Love,
derivative. Yeah, love.
compassion. They give us 10. Love, compassion, humility. Oh no, no, no. I'm so glad I was Satanist, Christian Satanist. Forgiveness, honesty, humility. Did you catch that with Dobest? Humility,
Hey,
forgiveness, honesty, and integrity. But there's other cultures that value some of this. It's not specifically. I guess I should ask it specifically Christian values: faithfulness, patience, and perseverance, justice and fairness, purity and holiness. Who values that this day and
you
age?
should
And
um,
gratitude.
you should read a book by Tom Holland, not the actor, a British historian called Dominion, where he goes through the Christian Middle Ages and the creation of the modern Western mind, like where we get all these conception of human rights or natural laws or all of that stuff, how that is developed and forged into what
There's
we
no
take
natural
as
law. Law is a man-made concept.
well. Well, that's your
I mean,
opinion,
there's
and
laws of
I
physics
share
if
in it.
that's what they mean by natural law, but it never is.
Yeah, well, natural law sort of evolved into a few. Uh, Actually, I'm not going to get into this talk because I haven't internalized that book enough, so I don't want to speak on his behalf, the historian, without actually knowing it, and I I'm not sure what I think on the topic, and so I will. Is it? Do you plead your fifth? Is that the American term? When you
Yeah,
invoke the right of silence.
to not against self-incrimination.
Mm,
You don't
okay.
something about you don't you're not you're not obligated to incriminate yourself or something.
hmm So I'll invoke that. I won't spread lies or falsehoods intentionally or
That would not be
unintentionally.
Christian at all.
Yeah, no, I
Oh,
wouldn't. But
cool,
again,
untrackable. We're trying to figure out what Christian values are. They have agape, which is I know it is Greek. It to me it seems like Christianity's trying to put its brand on values that existed before Christianity and capture them and repurpose them and say these are Christian values. Without us, you wouldn't have them at all. Hey,
well,
untrackable.
to some extent, yes. To some extent, it is a continuation of uh, Greek and Roman values given Christian veneer. But there are a lot of genuine Christian sort of inventions, you can say, that are integral parts of our modern society. But again, I won't get
Like
into that
servant
since
leadership, where the meek should
that is
like
actually a
you
big point,
defer
though.
to the
Yeah,
meek instead of ruling over them.
the
This it
reversal
seems
of
like picking and choosing which Christian values serve.
wait,
So I don't think the foundation is Christian values. I think Christian values are being used in service of some other set of values
wait. I need
that are
to.
not
I
being
just
articulated.
realized
And the
I can
kingdom
look
of God as an alternative allegiance. What
I
are your
like how I
thoughts on trackable?
there.
Yeah, I pulled up when you guys were talking about rights. For instance, the right to remain silent. That's when I clicked the button, so I may have missed something in between.
We were
But
just talking about when people say Christian, like the Norwegian Constitution has a paragraph about it's founded on Christian values, but it doesn't actually say what those values are. So we were just trying
Sadly.
to figure out what when people say Christian values, what specific values are they talking about?
Well, that is the first sentence, though. There is a second sentence which might
Humanistic.
be. Well, no. The first sentence is the foundational values remains our Christian and humanistic inheritance, and this constitution shall secure democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And so that seems to imply that, at least in this version of the constitution, the revelation made in the 9th of May 2014 that those 3 points are derivatives of the Christian humanistic inheritance. But again, what are those?
Right, they're not spelled that those paragraphs are not really saying
well,
much of
that
anything.
that's
I,
because
I,
they're
I
not. Oh yeah, do go on.
yeah, I saw something today. I think it was a clip from a movie, and it was like rights don't exist. It's just man-made and all this stuff. But when you talk about God, um, there are many depictions and versions and books and stuff like that of God. However, let's just use that Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, which is the right to remain silent and prevent self-incrimination, right? Um, there can be no law that can make me speak. You understand that, right? So if I do something, or if you suspect me of do something, of having done something, uh, there is no effort that can make me speak. If I choose to shut my mouth and not speak, there is no effort that can counteract that. Because what are you going to do? You're going to kill me? Because then guess what? I will never speak again. So that's like part of the rights of a human. That's why we have these certain things. The right to defense, um, you know, in America, it becomes a big argument about guns, but I could defend my life with a pencil. I could defend my life with words. I could defend my life with a refrigerator if I had to. Uh, there is no definition of what you use to protect your life, and therefore it becomes a right to life and how you preserve it. So um these things that would say, oh well, we don't have these rights over here, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if you're in Russia, it doesn't matter if you're in China, it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or Australia or England or anywhere. If you exist, nobody is going to protect you better than you, and nobody can bring something out of you that you don't want to give them. And so that's when it becomes, uh, regardless of the book, a God-given right. You understand?
Well, how much willpower do you have? How much willpower do you have? How long can you resist torture? How long can you resist emotional torture? If someone took your family and, if you don't walk this line, if you don't, do this activity, we'll kill them. Like, you have the right, you have the ability to reject that. Do you have the willpower to actually do so?
I resist emotional torture every day on this thing.
Hopefully not for me. I
Oh
hope I don't
no,
torture
no,
you emotionally.
not for you.
Again, you even in those instances, like you said, you take my family, you torture me, but you cannot force me to say something. You could kill my, and again, like you said, their tactics don't trump my God-given rights. You could kill my family, but ultimately, you're going to punish me with death, but you will never get the words out of my mouth if I
I,
so choose to withhold them.
It's still a charge. Like even under torture, you still
yeah.
ultimately make the choice to succumb or not.
I get your point. I just don't like the usage of right here. That sounds more just like a God-given ability, if we're going to assume a god, because the terminology of right just it
I,
doesn't seem right
I
to me,
understand that.
if I'm allowed to make that pun. But
Yes, no,
it
it
doesn't
makes so
change the
much
point, though.
sense. It because you say right, and then you have like right and wrong. Should you say something sometimes, or should you withhold? So yes, I agree with you. With you have the ability to not say anything. You have the ability to go mute and endure whatever they do because you won't speak, and it could cost you your life. Um, but your right, your ability to live will be dependent on the how you navigate what you have to go through to maintain. Which when then you go into, do you have to kill to live? Uh, do you have to endure hardships in order to move forward? And honestly, life in and of itself, I believe, is a hardship, and there will be blood. Um,
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Life is fundamentally painful. There are
Is
challenges.
it? You think? Is it? Is yours
Maybe not
doesn't
our
seem
modern world.
particularly painful.
Not our modern world, because we
Oh,
have we are so good, we have crafted societies, but the fundamentals of life is still suffering, pain, challenge, and reward. But my forefathers, your forefathers, that's the right word, yeah, like constructed societies which, they take pain then, which alleviates pain now. You don't have to suffer through hunting for a deer in the forest unless you want to. They had to
yeah.
do
So
that.
it's there's it's something other than suffering. If our suffering is less than our
Yeah,
ancestors, we've progressed in something.
but in what? Uh,
I don't know. Um, Thriving, prosperity. Um,
oh, you want to know a bleak sign of our prosperity? The number one, like, okay, there's more obese people than there are starving people in the world. Uh,
really? Well,
yeah,
probably just in America alone. So there's more fat people in America than starving children in Africa.
I don't know. I think it was like 500 million are suffering malnutrition, and like a billion are
Well, why don't we
suffering
take food
obesity.
from the fat people and give them to the African people instead of trying to take money from the rich and give to the poor? We could do it that way. It's like the joke about Karen Carpenter and Mama Cass. If Mama Cass had just given Karen Carpenter one of her sandwiches, they'd both be alive today.
I don't know what that is, but I'll just nod and say yes. What I'm reminded of is
Cultured Philistine.
yeah, it's a recent well, it is recent, a song. I don't remember the name of the artist, but he performed at ARC, you know, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, that conference by
No, what is that?
uh,
I don't know
it's
that.
it's
I
I
know the
think
ARC
began
is
in
an artistic organization.
oh no, it began in 2023.
What's it called? Alliance of
For responsible citizenship.
what?
It's
That sounds
by
like a bunch of Karens.
no, it by Peterson, Murray, the Weinsteins, a lot of various sort
It's
of.
founded in June 2023. How come I never heard of this?
Well, I don't know, but my point is, in the recent conference, a guy performed the song "Rich Men North of Richmond," which
Oh
became really
yeah.
popular. And in that, it was something like, if you're 5'3" and you weigh 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for a bag of fudge rounds. Like, a really visceral critique of this. Should we really give food stamps and unrestricted food to obese
Well, I
people, and
mean,
should they be
food
allowed to get?
stamps is not paying for the diet that these obese people eat. There's
Yeah,
no way they're getting obese on just what food stamps provides every
yeah.
month. So they're finding some other way to access
But if
their
they
ho
can
hos and
become
ding dongs
obese,
and pies and
yeah.
cakes and fried chicken, McDonald's fries, whatever else they're eating.
But if they can become obese, then should they really have food stamps? That's the critique I got from that song, at least, or that sentence in the song. Uh, and
So it's something that I've seen, and I've followed some gurus on YouTube, and having been in the food industry for quite a long time, it's like give sugar to the poor, and give meat to the rich. They're both going to be fat, because you know sugar without working turns into fat in the body. However, uh, uh, red meat in the belly takes a long time to digest, and then you wind up with fat poor people and fat rich people. So it's people that maintain a solid mixture of diet that will not be obese. However, you have that curve. So you have and it's multiple curves, because you have the curve of the fat and the fat, and then you have the people that aren't fat, but then you also have that curve that really coincides with it, that is the rich and the poor.
maybe in
It,
America, we
do
don't
they have a
have
lot of
as
fat people in Norway?
sure, um, but not as much. Uh, like there's a good bit of belly fat on most people, but nothing on the level of obesity or morbid obesity. Um, Although there are people who are that heavy. Not there's not like there are quite many, by historical standards, but not compared to America. But most of them seem to be working class, whilst the middle class and rich they have the money to actually buy healthy foods, which don't require 3 hours of exercise every day to even stay calorie neutral. Like that's the issue. The cheapest foods are the most unhealthy. Like for example, if I wanna, the cheapest food I can make is probably number one, candy. If I just look at calories, like pure energy, I can sustain myself on that for maybe a week, and then I suffer from lack of protein and vitamins and everything. That is really cheap, pure energy. Then number two is probably frozen pizza, also really cheap, also not that great for you, but
Oh,
you
that's
can
my
eat it a
whole.
lot.
That's like half my diet.
Yeah, and then maybe mac and
But for
cheese,
that
actually,
reason,
also
though,
really
because
cheap.
it's cheap, I know how to
Exactly.
cook it, and it stretches far. I could get more than one meal
Yeah,
out of it.
and that's a big issue because at least I think a big difference between middle class and lower class um, is the sort of food culture. And there's this whole idea of actually cooking food. That's the it's manly to stay in the kitchen and cook food. You're gonna do your masterwork. My dad is the best lasagna. No, my dad is the best lasagna. And there's this you don't there's a very big consciousness about the health of food, but only the middle and upper class actually have the economic freedom to care about that. Now, the middle class is very big in Norway. Like maybe 10-15% are working class, and then maybe 10% are upper class, and everything else is middle class. So the middle class is massive in Norway, but still, the very bottom, they don't have that much freedom. But in all honesty, it's not that hard to make healthy food cheap. I think the main problem is time. They work a lot for little pay, and so they're very dissatisfied, and they maybe often work overtime to even have something extra. And then they don't really have the time or energy to cook food, and so they resort to that takes the least amount of time and is the least expensive for that. Whilst I, as a student, I buy cheap. I have to. Do you know how much like ground beef is compared to ground
I
chicken?
thought you were
Like
middle class. That sounds like poor
I'm a
people thinking.
student, Jeff. I'm a student. I live on my I don't have the same means. Like right now, I'm certainly in the bottom 5% of society in terms of wealth. Uh,
So you don't count
like
your parents. You're like class background.
well, I don't live with them. They don't fund my food. They don't fund my economic lifestyle. Like sure, they do give a monthly dividend, but that that's not enough to cover rent.
Well, you're
It's
pretty bougie for a poor person then. I didn't know you were in our.
Hey, there's a difference between economy and culture. I grew up middle class. I grew up economically and culturally middle class, but and now I move out, and so I very restricted. I gotta buy the lowest quality food. I can't have beef that often. It has to be like chicken or pork. Like today, for dinner, I made Mexican pot. I don't know what you would call it, but where
Mexican
you
pot.
easy, quick and dirty. But that requires, ground beef or ground meat, and like
You
I
showed us one of
cannot
your
buy.
meals the other day. That was not poor food. It was
What
like
did I show
this.
you?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. Was it some kind of fish and vegetables on a plate? It looked like
Oh yeah,
something out of a restaurant.
yeah. But that's because it's
I
not
don't
a
know. I don't. You're not a convincing poor person. Put it this way.
okay. That
I'm
meal.
so poor. Look at this grilled salmon with cumin and rosemary and thyme, and
Hey, that
seared
is.
asparagus with um like
Oh, that
what is it?
meal.
Clarified butter. That's not how poor people eat.
while having four walls and an internet connection. I'm so sorry.
Well,
The
there's no poor people in Norway that exist without the internet like that. The poverty in Norway is, you
Oh,
know,
so
it,
you're Norway poor.
the West poor. Actually, I don't know to compare myself to the West. Yeah,
Do they
I'm
have
now
okay? Do
Norway
they have
poor.
trailers in Norway at all? Trailer houses?
Like for vacations, yes.
No, for people to live in mobile
No,
homes, mobile
no,
home
no, no,
estates.
not at all.
No,
That
then you don't know
that's
poor.
like trailer
Go
parks.
somewhere with your poor.
Trailers, that's like the poor people's vacation. Instead of taking a flight to Greece, they have a trailer. They move around Europe and they, go on vacation to Germany. That was my first few vacations as a little child. Was in
You talking
a
about an
camping
RV, like a
van, a trailer.
camper?
Yeah, yeah. But that's the closest we have. There's
Oh no,
no.
these are stationary.
Yeah,
If
I
if
know.
your
I've
if
seen
your
those.
air and heat blows up from vents in the floor instead of the ceiling, you're probably in a trailer.
Yeah.
I could be fully employed and my home would could still be my car. You know what I mean? Like it's cheaper to have a gym membership just
Mhm.
for a shower than it is for a home. And then so that's like America poor. Even the working poor, like I could have a full-time job, I could make $40,000 a year, but my I maintain a vehicle for travel, but my travel is also my home, and it's like I said, it's cheaper to have a gym membership for um, maintenance of yourself than it is to have a home.
Yeah.
Is this from experience?
I have I have experienced homelessness for about like 3 months. My brother experienced homelessness for close to a year,
Oh my God.
and this is working homelessness. So having a job and your car is your home until
I have a.
you can until you can even get an apartment. You know what I mean? Because they want um, the deposit. They want first and last month's rent, and then you know any other fees or fines or anything like that along with it. But you have to save up to even get an apartment. So at some point, it's like some people say, "Well, do you even need a car?" Well, unless I'm going to live at work and just wake up, like I'm a military man, so I know what it's like to wake up and already be at work. It doesn't work like that when you're a free person. So you know,
Wait, I have a
and
question then, because
yeah, go
that
ahead.
sounds like okay. If you're working full time, because maybe this is disclosing too much information. I don't know, but like currently, I have, I rent a room, I get enough dinner that I need for all my food and everything and all my living, and like my yearly budget, what I have is just. I, I don't know if the word just hurts it down, but it isn't much. Like it's just 14,000. It's not
A year?
much. Yeah, that's all I
Yeah,
have. Like,
that's in America that would not be much at all.
yeah, exactly. But then I'm very curious how I can have all this and then
But you're like what's paid for though? Like you pay monthly rent. You're
rent, electricity, food, transportation if I need that. So public transport. Yeah, like I don't have many more expenses than
yeah.
that.
How are you doing it? That's you must it must be
Well,
really cheap room, like a really
this
affordable, I should say.
this room is 500 a month.
So
Electricity,
5 times 12 is 60.
yeah, and then
So
food
six
is
thousand.
maybe 300 or 400 a
So
month.
that leaves 8,000 to for food and expenses.
Yeah,
So yeah, I guess it is doable on 14,000. It just seems
yeah, like that is very little. The Norwegian average wage is uh, what is it? Average wage? It's way higher, but maybe it's increased. Let's see,
So
SSB.
if you're not paying for insurance for multiple people,
Yeah,
and again, you guys have public transport because you are a compact country. Out here, where I don't live in the city, I live more in rural America. So I do have to have a car, and my wife does have to have a car, and we do have to pay for the insurance and the gas and um, um, and we do have to pay for our health insurance. Um, and we do have when it comes to insurance and you're paying for it rather than having a socialized thing, there is a deductible, which means you have to spend upwards of $2,000 to $5,000 a year in medical before they cover it.
hmm.
And when you think about income taxes, so I pay roughly $1,000 a month in taxes, and at $40,000 a year, that takes me down to $28,000 of discretion, and then I get to operate my life off of $28,000 a year. And when you want to live in a home, now you owe the bank, so that's a bill. So I'm not renting, and that's $1,200 a month. With insurance and principal and everything, escrow. You know what I mean? Included.
so if you
And
own, then there's maintenance and expenses and things that home ownership generates expenses as
yes,
well.
which means I have to have gas for the lawnmower, which means I either pressure wash my own house, or I have to hire somebody to come and pressure wash my house. Um, and then you have your utilities that adds on. So it's like the paying never stops, but the value of the dollar keeps going down. However, the wage really never goes up unless you raise up and take another position, and then as soon as based off of the economy, even if you take another position that raises you up another $10,000, the dollar becomes less worth, and that's the struggle over here in
Yeah.
middle America.
I mean, we have a lot of the same issues, but there are a few striking ones which we don't have at all. Insurance. I don't think I have any insurance at all because I don't have a car, and that's really only. I don't own a house, so that's really the only insurances you would have because universal health care. Now, of course,
Right.
that is something we pay for, but not me. That's something I will pay for when I'm older and I contribute back with my taxes. So that is a very big tax burden. Like 30% of the entire state budget is the welfare state. It's like it's a massive tax burden, but it's something that only becomes a burden once you are stable. You know, I don't pay for it. I gain from my parents paying for it, and then when I became the age of my grandparents, I get back again. But so that's certainly something we lack, and I think it contributes a lot to the difference, I suppose. We also deal with inflation, though, but um, I don't know. Maybe it's I think the trade unions managed to keep like wage growth somewhat in line with inflation, and I'd say somewhat. There is still a drop off. There is still a loss since the 70s, but the wages keep somewhat more up. But like in return for all this, this means that the general Norwegian economy is just less efficient and less productive because that's a sacrifice. You know, do you want a comfortable society or a productive one? America is the number one leader in medical technology and new pharmaceuticals, and like global science and medicine advances at such a rapid pace because America has the whole insurance scheme which pumps money into the system. Now that is a benefit to me, you know, because I get all these free drugs, but to you, that is certainly a detriment. That is sort of the sacrifice of that system. You know, you gain innovation, you gain productivity, but you lose on the security and the safety. And I think it's the same with a lot of stuff, especially when you compare America and Europe, is that Europe, for the most part, chooses the comfortable, stable, safe position, which means that they stagnate a bit, they lag behind, their growth is a bit slower, whilst America seems to always choose the option which maximizes top-down growth, but never, you know, the bottom-up approach. There's no focus on the working class in the same way that you would have in Norway or Europe at large. And you know, I have my gripes with the trade unions and those whole movements. I think they are very corrupt and very inefficiently organized in Norway, and the whole structure is flawed. But it's certainly better than having no organized opposition, you could say, to the capital. Labor and capital are more balanced. You know, I think Norway, it leans a bit too heavy in the labor direction because capital is punished a lot. But America, I think it leans too much in the capital direction. And so, you know, you would gain from that. I don't know the legality behind that though. Like, can you just create a trade union? Is it restricted? Is it easy? Like what? Or is the system even compatible with it?
I don't know, honestly. I know that people try to unionize. If you get enough signatures or people together to unionize, there's a process by which it could happen. But I don't know
Yeah.
much more
Well,
beyond that. I think it is potentially it's possible to create a union from enough grassroots momentum for it.
if you want a model which seems to be working, though I have my gripes, the Norwegian union system is actually it's not necessarily innovative, but because I think this is the way that most of Europe uses. Because Europe is not really a capitalist society; it's a corporatist society. Because the fundamental system of the unions is that you have all these unions that are nested into each other. At the top, you just have sort of a massive union organization for the labor, and then you also have a union for the capital, which goes up into this massive unions. And these two they sit down once every year and just discuss the wages of every single job in society and just how much are we going to raise it by. And they do this every single year, and they sort of the deals are only concluded once labor and capital are in agreement, and so you have a constant wage revision. So for example, oh, this year let's increase the wages of waiters by 2%, but let's not increase the wages of teachers because they've already gotten a wage, or you know, the capital doesn't really allow that. We have to find compromises and everything, but um, it seems to have been working somewhat. However, the trade-off is that at the top, the Norwegians are not rich at all. Like an engineer in Norway could earn 3 times as much if he just moved to America, and that's not like that. That is the actual numbers. You know, you can earn so much more, upwards of 10 times as much, just being a normal civil engineer in America compared to Norway, and that's because that the sort of deal between capital and labor is that we'll sort of compress the whole wage market, that the bottom wages will be pulled up by bringing down the wages of the top. That's sort of the deal of Norwegian society, is that the bottom can have it comfortable because the top doesn't take as
How does
much.
the top voluntarily submits to that? How do you convince the top to go along with that?
Unions, and they don't, that's if they can find a job which offers a good wage, they'll take that. But workplaces, i.e., capital, they are on agreements about general wages, and so it remains like that to a certain extent. Now, of course, the top still earns way more than the bottom. I'm not saying it doesn't, and they still live very lavishly, and they are Norwegians, so our top is like near the global top, but they're not as wealthy as they could be. But most Norwegians are very happy with that. Like there have been plenty of sociological surveys, and above a certain point, it doesn't really matter the wealth you have, at least to Norwegians. Like they think, like most Norwegians agree that it's a good thing that we have equalized the wages such as this. Sure, it means that sort of unproductive, like the bottom receives more rewards than their productivity says. They receive a disproportionately large award for their productivity, whilst the top receives a disproportionately small. But that's just accepted. That is just how Norwegian society is done, and they like that. Now, my big sort of issue with this system is that it's ideally the sort of trade union structure of capital and the trade union structure of labor, they shouldn't be directly tied to politics, but they are. Like the leader of the big sort of capital trade union that has all these other capital unions nested into each other, she is, I think it's a she right now, but she is a member of the center-right party. And they are officially the trade union of the center-right party, whilst the Union of Labor is the member of the Labor Party, which makes sense, but it's sort of hypocritical because in an internal survey, the massive labor union, which is officially part of the Labor Party, or at least allied with it and agrees with them on politics and pushes politics, whatever, they did an internal survey, and only like 14% of all organized members of that wider union structure actually voted for the Labour Party. Like 60% voted for the Progressive Right Party, so like the furthest mainstream right-wing party, which the Labour Party is in complete opposition to. And so they are giving money to this party because by unionizing, you give a bit of your wage to them, and so they can organize strikes and whatever. Complexity, but like you give a bit of money trickles up from you into the union, and that money is used to fund union activities. But because the unions are tied with the two mainstream sort of center globalist political parties, they inadvertently fund those political parties. And so in a union structure where like only 14% support the Labour Party, all their funds that goes to political advertisement and lobbying, not lobbying actually, because lobbying isn't allowed, but like lobbying-esque activities are in support of a party which only a small minority of its members support. And so that it's too tied to the political parties, in my opinion. I like the idea of the sort of union network of labor and union network of capital to sit down and sort of figure out what they'll do for the year. I like it, and it has worked, but it's too tied to the politics, I'd say. But the answer to the comment, yes, progressive right. They were founded in 76, 77. Back then they were called Anders Lange Party for severe reduction in taxes and and removal of road tolls or something, but they switched to the Progressive Party because progressive doesn't mean left wing. That's an Americanism, that is an American term. Same way that liberal means left wing, progressive means left wing, and that's an American term. Like in Europe, or at least in Norway, progressive is just you want change. You're conservative if you want to keep it as it is. If you like the current structure, progressive wants to push the boundaries. Now, that can be both on the left and right. Like the progressive right-wing party wants to reduce taxes. They say they want. They want closer borders. They want to move a bit away and move the current system forward. And so they are right-wing progressives. But right now they do actually fit with the American term too, because they are, like in Norway, they are very right wing. They are the most right wing mainstream party, but like their internal leadership asked about the American election said that they would vote for Kamala Harris. So like our most right wing mainstream party said that they would vote for Kamala Harris, and so the right isn't really a right wing in that sense. Although, of course, I consider them right wing because they are, but not by American standards. At least not on all issues. There's certainly, right wing on some issues, but not all of them. But yeah, so progressive rights, it exists. I almost voted for them last time in the last election, but I ended up voting for the conservative right. I don't know why I did it, but I did it. Next
You
time
don't
I'll
know why
definitely...
you voted the way you voted?
No, but it was between two parties, and I just sort of went with my gut in the
Okay.
booth, and I took the conservative right, so the center right, instead of the further out right party. It was just local elections. Wasn't too important. I don't live in that municipality anymore either way, so not as important. Nixon, Reagan, I quite like Nixon. I don't know much about
He was
Reagan,
a
I'll
crook.
be honest, but I like him. He was cool. He had good historical analysis, and that's all that matters. I don't care about his politics. I don't like his gold standard bullshit. Either way, but he was good at foreign policy analysis. That's all I care about. That's all I look at. That's the only things I've seen from him. I know the meme. I'm no crook, and I've seen some clips of him doing foreign analysis, and I liked it. And from that, I'll just decide that I like Nixon. So yeah. That as a European, I don't need to know more than that. I don't have to.
I mean, I
The
doubt most
intricacies.
Americans know more than that. You might even know
Yeah,
more than they do.
I probably do. Maybe that's a bit arrogant, but I don't have much confidence in the average American public. I have confidence in them being average.
It's not the education. You can get you could come live in America and get a quality education in our public schools. It's the motivation of the Americans themselves to acquire that education.
Yeah,
They're not going to put a lot of effort into it. It's just not interesting. It's not fun. It's not interesting enough.
that is very
But
true.
the opportunity is there. We just don't take
Exactly.
advantage of it.
Which I do agree. And it's similar in Norway. We have seen reductions in PISA scores. PISA, the
No.
international test of school achievement or whatever that they do every year to assess the global sort of
Every year,
educational
they
level.
did it to us like every 4 or 5 years. Like certain
Yeah,
grades had to take it, but
yeah.
that's
Well,
it. And then you took it
They do.
again like 4 or 5 grades later.
Yeah, but that's internal measurements. PISA, I don't know how recent it is, but it's a after you finish school, I believe, which is, I don't think it's done on every student, but it's like done on a representative selective student body or whatever every year. It compares, so you can see which schools or which countries have the best educational results and how it changes. And what you see is that Norway has consistently gone down. All of Europe is consistently going down throughout the decades. But and most people will say that, oh yeah, the quality is lower, our kids are getting dumber, and I think in part the quality is indeed getting dumber. But I think maybe this is controversial to say, but I think the biggest influence is just immigrants. The percentage of
That's
immigrants in,
Masad typed this at the exact same time you were saying it.
but like it is true though. Like that is the biggest demographic change for
So
the
the
past years.
immigrants are the ones that are not educated and they're bringing down everybody else's scores.
The average, yes. I think if you adjusted for citizenship, or well, a lot of them have citizenship, but like, are you Norwegian or not? Like, sure, I think it still would have gone down because the quality is legitimately worse, but I don't think it would have gone down by the same
I don't
amount.
know the most of the people, 99.9%. We might have had two or three foreign students in our entire school. Um, they were breaking down the scores. It wasn't the immigrants; it was the Americans themselves.
Well,
Or they
at
weren't
least,
bringing down the scores; they weren't achieving the scores in the first place.
yeah. Well, at least in my experience, it's very okay. There was
And the
instead of,
Asian immigrants,
yeah, but
I
we
would
don't
say
get
that's not,
those.
so it's not even all
Yeah,
immigrants. It's not
yeah,
just like
it's
the
Middle Eastern,
immigrants are
North
bringing
African.
it down. It's specific. If you're going to make that argument, it's immigrants from specific areas.
But when they are 90% of all immigrants, then I, you don't. I don't have time to say Middle Eastern and North African immigrants every
You don't
single
have
time.
time to say that. You just said it in like half a second.
Okay, true, but
You
like
have time to say all this other stuff.
that is already an assumption. Like when you talk about immigrants in Norway, you don't talk about the Polish people, because we have a lot of Poles. You don't talk about that. It's very specific what you talk
Why?
about.
To avoid sounding racist?
Sure, but also because they are the ones who actually impact society, and are have there's
So it
a, and
seems
have
like
any
you would
reasons to talk
be,
about.
if it's that particular group, it seems like you'd be even more invested in talking about that, identifying that particular group instead of
Yeah,
folding it into
uh,
immigrants.
you are correct, but my inner Norwegian is policing
Oh,
my own
right. Y'all are too.
speech. No, but
It's,
like
it's the
the
Browns.
well, there was the Danish are probably the best at this, but they all like they do analysis of the mandatory service records, and part of mandatory military service you do a variety of tests, and so they see, they can see test scores, and one of the tests are heavily correlates with IQ. And Norway and Sweden also has this, so like that's one of the ways we figure out the impact education actually has on IQ that's separate from the Flynn effect. Minor, but still there. But that I digress. That's beyond the point. Like they use that and just analyze like which names correlate with which IQs, and all the various versions of Mohammed, or whatever you type it. All of them were quite far
Yeah,
down.
that does sound racist.
Yeah, well,
That happens with the blacks in America, too.
yeah, I'll say it's more about, like, I think the vast majority of difference in IQ, at least between interconnected peoples, so between, for example, the Middle East and Europe, I think it's very illogical to assume the vast majority of that is biological. Because if there was such a vast biological gulf, then one side would just conquer the other easily. Like if there was a 15-point difference in the average between Middle Easterners and Europeans, then throughout history, uh, whenever there was a more warlike society on one side, they would easily conquer the other and keep it. So I think it's more cultural, and you see that, like you see, not exactly the Middle Easterns, but in England, for example, when you compare an ethnic Nigerian raised in England compared to an Afro American of Nigerian descent in America compared to a Nigerian, you see that, okay, Nigerians, the lowest average IQ, then African Americans, the a bit higher again, closer to the average, and then in England, they are much closer to average. So, like, it goes from a 30-40 point difference between ethnic Europeans and Nigerians to a 10-15 point difference to a
I
three,
thought the
four, 5 point
Nigerians were some
difference.
of the most. They were like the Asians. They're really.
I don't know if it was the Nigerians, but
Oh,
it's some sub-Saharan group,
because the
African
Nigerians are
group.
supposedly very intelligent and
Yeah,
succeed very well in colleges. Like just like the
it.
Asians and the Indian people do. They come
Yeah.
over here and
Uh,
they're one of the top tier
well, you
of
have to
immigrants.
look at who it is that are
So
moving
it's
out.
it's
But
the other it's the other black tribes in Africa, black countries.
it doesn't really matter to my point, Jeff, because my point is just that, okay, maybe there's a biological difference, maybe there's not, but most evidence points to that if there is a biological difference, it's very minor, and that the largest difference is culture, or the sort of socialization aspect of it.
I,
That
I've never seen I've never seen somebody be socialized into being more intelligent than they naturally were.
what? If you're encouraged from from a young age, to read and be intellectual and do this and that
Right,
and
but if
think,
you don't have the inner desire or interest or motivation to do all that, you're going to be average at it at best.
yeah,
Because
but that's better than
the
not knowing at
kind
all.
of curiosity and drive it like intelligent people have, it starts at a very early age, probably when they're toddler like babies and toddlers, and they're driven to take in and process and understand the world and know things and all. Like you can't socialize people into native intelligence. It's either there when you're a baby or it's not. And you can socialize them
Debilitated.
into learning to read and do math and stuff, but not to value it and not to have the intensity that it takes to truly like a
I think the ability to read and your level of literacy, your level of numeracy, that is a big part of your intelligence, and that is something that's learned. Like if I
no, I
a
think it's
13 year
innate.
I think if it was innate, then we wouldn't have the society we have now because we haven't had literacy and words
I,
long enough for that ability to be
I
innate.
was reading before I was speaking, and my siblings barely read at all. We were all taught and socialized the same way.
Yeah, but compare, like, I'm not saying I do agree that the biggest impact is genetics and just your base. I
Well,
do
you
agree.
just
That
said the
is
opposite, though. That's why I was trying to make
no,
the case
no,
that I'm
no.
making. You said the
There's
biggest
a
difference
nuance.
is culture and how they're
Jeff,
socialized.
there is a nuance. What I agree with you on is that in each individual, the sort of variance of IQ, or between individuals, variance of IQ is and intelligence is to a large extent genetics, and then to a smaller extent the socialization aspect. Genetics is the biggest part,
But
but I'm
I'm
saying
saying
that
without
the difference
with
in variance between different cultures, the biggest impact or the biggest difference in variance is the cultural aspect and not the genetic side.
well, I don't know how they would determine that part. If once you scale up to entire cultures and groups, I don't know how they would determine that it's that one single factor that's making the difference. But on an individual level, I'm saying that if the genetics are not there, the socialization's not going to make much of a difference.
Yeah, but I don't know if I agree. I think most people have the genetics there, and so you can
I
encourage it.
don't.
But
I don't
like,
think most people are born with this. I don't think most people are born with a passion for acquiring knowledge and deep thinking and critical intelligence. I just don't.
They
I
don't
don't
need
see that
that.
as the norm. I
We're
see
not
that as
talking
the
about
exception.
genius. We're talking about intelligence, not
No, just
genius.
basic intelligence. Most people don't like to sit do math. Most people don't like to read very long or very deeply. Most people don't
And
like
yet
to
they are
solve
capable of
puzzles.
it.
That's a niche population.
I don't
And they're
disagree, but
doing
that's
it as babies, as toddlers. They're doing that kind of stuff as kids. Most people are not. They're just playing with their dolls or whatever kids do.
okay. But then let's just pure statistics. The one I talked about earlier, where you compared ethnic, uh, one group of Africans. They have this like at a large enough level where they have the circa same genetics. You know, on a group level, 1,000 Nigerians in England, in Nigeria, and America. You know that the genetic variance isn't going to be the big impact and difference between them. But that alone, like just the fact that one sample was grown up in Nigeria and lived in Nigeria, or I don't know if it was Nigeria, but at least in Africa, one in America, and one in Britain, did show that there was a substantial difference in intelligence between them. Like, I think that,
I
sure,
don't. The idea of like compare, because intelligence is an individual thing. So the idea of group intelligences or comparing the intelligence of groups,
averages, Jeff.
you lose me there. Because I can only compare intelligence between individuals.
If 1,000 people have an IQ of 104, like that's their average, and compare it to, and then another group, the average of those 1,000 individuals is 100. You know, there is a substantial difference there.
That's an average though. It's
Yeah,
not accounting
but
for the individual intelligence. It loses
we're not talking.
resolution when you look at it from that scale. I don't know what it can usefully tell you. You can't aggregate all people of one uh, ethnic background or skin color or whatever and then look at the intelligence of a group. Intelligence is individual. A group doesn't have a single intelligence.
Jeff, you misunderstand statistics. Statistics is to take the individual characteristics. What are
Well,
the average
yeah,
individual
but you have to
characteristics?
know what you're trying to learn from statistics, and the thing like if you're thinking it's telling you anything useful about the individuals in the group, I think you're misusing statistics. I don't think that
But
that's what statistics is there to do.
that is disagree.
Because you're drawing conclusions and making assumptions about groups based on this statistical average that I don't think you can make about the individuals in that group.
I fundamentally disagree on that. Statistics is primarily to be able to predict,
It's
individual behavior from the
probabilistic.
group.
It's
Yes,
not.
but if at a large enough scale, the probability of it just being false and
But
meaningless.
the probability of it tells you nothing about the each individual instance that how
We're
it
not
exists
talking
in
about each individual
actuality.
instance. We're not talking about each
But
individual instance.
that's where you encounter intelligence. You encounter it in the individual mind, in the individual genetics. So you can't look for it outside of a location that it doesn't. It exists in the individual. That's the highest place that it exists. It doesn't like compound into this
That's not what I'm
single
saying
unit.
either.
No matter how many people you sample with statistics, it's still an
But you can
individual
compare,
phenomenon.
Jeff. It's an individual phenomenon that you can look at. You can look at group averages of individual phenomenon and compare between groups. You take the Nigerians or sub-Saharan Africans, exact same genetic group, one raised in Africa and one raised in Britain. The biggest difference there, if you will be their the living surroundings,
I
their
think
culture,
you're
their diet,
losing
everything.
resolution when you do that. You're not looking at anything concrete and useful. How do you determine who's British and Nigerian? Do you run a genetic purity test to make sure you're sampling pure Nigerians and pure British, or it's just arbitrary divisions by geographical region?
No,
Because any
Jeff,
one of
I'm
those
talking about
individuals could have multiple genetics in their
But at
background.
group levels, you outrule
But the
individual
group
variance.
itself is a false abstraction. Like just saying 100 Nigerians, you don't know the individual genetics of every one of those Nigerians. Some of them could have British genetics. Some of
Yeah,
them could have like. There's no
Jeff.
pure Nigerian genetics that you're isolating to say this represents the IQ of Nigerians.
But Jeff, the whole point of doing statistics at a large scale is that by doing it at a large enough scale, you can outrule the edge cases. If this specific genetic variation or giftedness, if that's 2%, if at a large enough level, one person at that 2% won't impact average. You can outrule the individual variance by doing it group levels. That's the whole point of doing group statistics. So you can be able to look at stats aside
But
from
your groupings
individual
are
variance.
arbitrary. They're not based on anything concrete or
What do you
empirical.
mean?
You're just
They are
saying,
not.
let's take these group of people that roughly resemble what I'm calling Nigerian and sample them. But if you don't drill down into the genetic level, you don't really know what's making up that one group.
Jeff, that's the whole point. You take a random sample of Nigerians, sure, a lot of them will have mixed blood from somewhere. Some will be highly rich and raised that way, but at a large enough level, you can assume that they are just the bog standard
So,
default
so there
Nigerian.
isn't you're assuming, you're
Of
making an
course,
assumption in there that
and an
there's
assumption that is
enough pure
statistically valid.
Nigerian genetics but you don't really have a way of knowing that without looking at each individual case. So there is an assumption involved.
Jeff, of course, but there's an assumption involved in anything, and that is the
But it's not a testable assumption, I guess is my problem with it. You're assuming that if we sample these people from Africa with dark skin called Nigerians, that enough of it will be pure enough where we can draw conclusions about, but there's no way to test that assumption.
at some level you just gotta accept because this. Okay, that's
Or
harsh.
you can use a
I'm not gonna
different
say that.
method, like examining the
There's no.
individuals.
But that is not what you want. You don't want to look at the individual. The whole
If
point is
if
to
I
be able to
want to know
compare
about
groups.
intelligence and compare it to other intelligence, I would have to look at each individual instance. Yes, that's the only way I would know to do it because intelligence doesn't exist at a higher scale. You're abstracting from that point.
Well,
So
okay,
I want to
sure.
look at the actual thing, not the thing clumped together in this abstraction that one
Do you
level up. That's not the
do you
thing.
do
And
you
where
think?
the whole thing is based on an assumption.
Okay, but Jeff, do you think IQ tests are a good measure of intelligence? Would you reference it if you're gonna try to figure out the individual intelligence of a person? Would IQ tests be a valid tool?
It's a tool. It's one of them. And if you give them enough tests over time and the score is more or less the same, you know it even even IQ. What are you measuring? Memory, attention span, processing speed.
That's not what you measure at all. What you measure
Yeah,
with
yeah. That
IQ
is. I've
is
taken plenty of
no, no,
IQ tests in my
Jeff,
life, and that is
Jeff,
exactly what they even categorize it by. They even break down the scores by those
Jeff. You
categories.
misunderstand. You're not measuring your memory or your processing power. You're measuring that compared to the group. You have standardized it based on a group level where you assume that you can outrule individual variance, so you can compare your individual variance to the group level. That you're measuring your
Then why
variance
why
in
do
these
they time my
intelligence.
attention like how long it takes to solve certain problems? Like why how is that not
Because they
measuring?
see what they're measuring you, but the only way you
Yes,
can say
they're
what level
measuring
of intelligence you
they're
have.
measuring they're measuring features of my cognition that they can capture with these tests.
But that is useless without
The
comparison.
score is being normed against the group for that year, that
Yes,
time period,
exactly.
whatever. But the actual things they're measuring are empirical things that they're observing in me with these tests.
Yeah,
Memory, they read off a list of things and you recall how many of them you can remember. They list 20 things, you can remember 18. That's a metric. That's a
I
direct
know,
measurement of my personal memory.
but that tells you nothing if you can't compare it to anything. Like just knowing that you took 10 seconds on this task. What does it mean? I don't know. I don't have any comparison. Like you have to have a group standard to be able to look. Are you intelligent actually? Are you above average, below? Like, where are you related to the group? That is like IQ tests are made by looking at groups, looking at variance, looking
It's
at
the
all that.
same as height and weight and all that other stuff. Like you can be 6 feet tall without comparing yourself to other people. It's an
But it
objective
is,
measurement
yes,
of your
but
height.
it's meaningless. It has no meaning or value without the comparison. What does it mean that I'm whatever height I am if I can't compare it
It's
to
just a
you?
fact. It's a fact, just like any other fact about
Yeah,
yourself.
but
Your eye color, like what does it mean that you have blue eyes? It's just a
sure,
it's
but
it's a
Jeff,
natural fact about you. It's
for
information
what
about
purpose?
yourself.
For what purpose are you gathering that fact? You're not gathering that fact to do descriptive statistics, to just gather facts. For a reason. There is a reason behind that. Well, okay, sure. Some
There's
people just
probably
want to know a
many
score.
reasons, and it depends on what context you're going to fit the fact in. But the fact is still a fact itself. Like
Yes, I do agree, but that fact is meaningless without.
well, it's
Uh,
meaningless for your purposes, but not for mine. Knowing my height and my processing speed and my memory and all that it has value to me, independent of any context that I inserted into or anything that I related to.
okay, sure, yes, but at least
Oh,
for
heated.
a lot of stuff.
What's up, Dolphs?
Hello. Do you have
Welcome.
any insightful ideas on statistics and group variance and the individual? Because I need to go soon, so hopefully you can just take over.
I am not going to be so arrogant as to think that I know everything about it. No. I mean, I've got my
Good.
opinions on it. I've got what I know about it, and that's about it. I don't want to speak definitively on it, and that's why I put up a definition of it in the comments.
Yeah.
What were you guys trying to figure out? Like, how'd you guys get on
I
this
don't even know
subject
how
of
we got. Oh, it's
statistics?
something about like immigrants bring down the
He thinks
it's the
intelligence
IQ
is not
scores of
measurable
the
at group
countries they
levels.
immigrate into.
Sorry,
I think the
hold on,
main
Dolphs.
difference
What,
is that I
hold
think the main disagreement is that if I get you correctly, Jeff, you do not think that intelligence is a trait measurable at the group level, or at least it's meaningless at that level, and it's an individual trait and thus
It's
cannot be
not it's
expected of the group.
definitely measured at the individual level. I don't know how you would give a group IQ test. You'd have to test each individual in the group.
Yes, and then you get a group average, which you can take. That is the average of that group, and then you can compare
So the
between
data
that group
is
and another group.
collected at the individual level.
Of course it is. I never
Okay.
said anything opposite of that, but you use the data at the group level because that's where it's useful. And you can compare group A and group B given the same tests on the individual level.
I don't think that's the only place it's useful. I think it's
No,
also useful at the individual level to the individual themselves. If I'm trying to solve a puzzle, I have an idea of how much bandwidth I'm going to have to give it, how much memory I have to draw on to solve. All of that tells me very important things that I can use without knowing the measurements of any other human beings in those traits.
yeah,
well,
I suppose.
statistics, as with anything else, always, and I've harped about this, and I've harped about this so many times, is that it all comes down to what the measurement problem is. How do you measure intelligence, and how do you know you're measuring it effectively? Like, we have tests, but we're not even confident that those are actually explaining what we're experiencing.
Well, like it depends on what you're trying to measure. And
Well, IQ tests only measure general IQ, by the way.
memory's easy to measure. Attention span, it's pretty easy to measure. Um, processing speed is another thing that they measure.
Yeah, but it measures general ability, or it tests on specific ability that it has seen through statistical analysis correlates with general ability, and then it gives you a general score. It can also give you the
Just
specific
like
score, but like
in PE class, they used to do these tests on us like once a year, where they see how many push-ups you can do and how
yeah,
many bar raises, whatever, and they'd run you through all these exercises and they'd count how many you can do, and then they'd mark it down and or how many they test your muscle mass and your height, like all these physical traits about
Yeah, and
So
with
IQ
IQ,
tests give you these series of puzzles, or sometimes it's matrices, patterns to look at, and you figure out the next one in the pattern, etc. And they give you enough of those that they can collect some data points about how long it takes you, how much memory it takes you to, like how much memory you can retain to solve them, all that stuff.
but those tests were arrived at through group statistics because they had to see which give this group of 1,000 people 100 tests each, and then see across the groups which tests
I don't
correlate the
know
most
why it
with each
would
other.
take that to arrive at a memory test. I can give you a list of 100 words
Yeah,
and see how many you remember. I don't need a
but
group
is
to do
that
that.
specific test a specific ability, or is it generalable? Like, you know, can it be generalized? Because sure, it's good to just measure a specific ability. But okay, for example, if you're going to measure sort of reaction speed, you'd imagine that correlates with processing speed, and it does. However, processing speed is like you can have two tests. One, you just sit in front of a screen. When the screen turns red, you click the button. That's a good test of processing speed, but it's not correlated with IQ at all, really. But the moment you add computation, so for example, when you see a color on the screen, you have to write the color or press the button with the correct color, then you have a computation, and now it's a good correlation. The only way you arrived at that is by seeing a lot of other stuff that you think are cognitive, and then you see that, all of these correlate with each other. So there seems to be this general factor of intelligence through all of these things, and you have this nested structure. So all of these processing speed tests, speed tests, some of them seem to correlate with each other. We think this might be a processing speed factor, which is why that's grouped independently. And the same with sort of visual spatial ability or verbal ability or working memory. But all of those also correlate with a general intelligence factor. And that's why you have IQ tests. You have the tests that correlate the most with your general ability. Now, not really, because if you wanted a test that has the highest correlation to general intelligence, you just have 10 vocabulary tests. But that obviously doesn't work because individuals are unique. But at an aggregate level, if you remove all individual variants on the group level, vocabulary is the number one predictor of IQ. And so if you just had 10 of them at the group level, it'd be the best tool. But at an individual level, it'll be horrible because you're not just testing intelligent vocabulary, but you sort of balance this.
You're measuring
Specific
specific
intelligence.
things, and then you're clumping them together and calling them intelligence, like arbitrarily.
No, based on correlation. Do they relate to each other? Your ability on this test, does it relate to your ability on this? If it doesn't, they're not really that related. But
But
if they
how do
do,
they
then that's
determine
related.
if it does or not?
Correlation, statistics. They see your scores on the group level. If you are placed at this ranking in the group on that test, but this ranking on that test, and the same person has that level of ratio between the rankings there, like then you can arrive at the general correlate. Because it's if I use 10 seconds on this test, on a working memory test, but I type the right word in the vocabulary test, that's impossible to figure out the correlation on an individual level. But on a group level, you can see the ranking of the group where you are and how it relates. Like that's how you construct an intelligence test. You make a lot of sort of smaller tests, you give them to a lot of people, and you compare the relative ranking of their scores on each test and see which ones correlate the most, which with each other. And you see the groupings of correlation, and that's how you sort of arrive at it.
What I know
I don't
about
see
it
what
is
that has to do with each individual's cognitive ability in
Your
whatever
ranking.
domain you're measuring.
Well,
The individual is going to have a certain memory capacity. They're going to have
yeah,
a
and that
certain.
memory capacity is determined in terms of your ranking to
It's not
the general
determined.
group.
It's already
Oh,
there. You're measuring
yeah,
something
okay.
that's already there. The group's not determining it.
Yeah, sure, you're correct, but at the same time, for example, you're gifted if you're in the top 2%. Like that is 2 standard
But that's
deviations.
what I'm saying. That's the arbitrary part. The way we break it down and classify
Yeah.
it, and we call this set of traits IQ, and we
But the
call
fact
this
that you
gifted.
are
That interests me less than the actual traits themselves that we're
sure,
measuring.
yes, but the fact that you are 2 standard deviations above, that is your ranking in the group. And you see that your ranking, for example, am I 1 standard deviation above, 2, 1.5, like that correlates across tests. And you can figure out the pattern of the individual. Like after you've gotten the group statistics, you can now compare individual scores to that group statistics and actually get something meaningful.
But that doesn't do as much for me as just applying it to things I'm trying to do in my life. It doesn't matter what your memory is because it's not going to affect what I do with my memory.
Well, okay, consider this then. You buy something, or you go to work, and there's this task you got to do, and it's designed for average people. And if you just know your raw score, you don't know if this is going to be hard for you or not. So maybe you should
I can
ask for
just
more
do
time
the
or not.
task and find out.
But maybe you can't. Like, this is hypothetical. Like, maybe you can't. Maybe you have to choose now. Do you want to extend the time or not? That's going to be a reduction in pay. But if you don't complete it, there's going to be no pay. And if you have the group ranking, you can know, oh, I'm below average on processing speed, so maybe I should just take the hit in a wage now, so I can at least get paid because I need that extra time. Or if you're way above compared to the average, like, this is designed for the average person.
I've
And so you
never
can-
been in that situation where I had to
Mm.
make where I
Probably
couldn't
not.
figure
Like-
it out by just trying the thing.
Well, Jeff, you are above average. Like, society is made for average. Like, if you're below average,
Maybe I'm too intelligent to understand intelligence. It's made for
Maybe.
average people.
Well, that is very true. Especially as at the far end, intelligence tests stop being that useful because, again, they're made on averages. So beyond the 70 to 130 range, like, it isn't really that
Yeah.
reliable anymore. Like, inside that range, it's really good.
Once you
but-
get about 3 standard deviations away,
Yeah.
it becomes fuzzy.
Yeah,
And
because
it's
then
not
you are
it's not just like granular enough to really
like,
measure.
I
beyond
think
that.
I did I did some quick math a few months ago. Like, if you wanted to make an IQ test that is reliable up to I think it was 175, you would need the testing group to be the entire population of the United States. If you did that, if you had 300 million people, then you'd have a really reliable test up to like 175. But you don't have 300 million because the rarity of each standard deviation is obviously more, and so to have a reliable test, you need a lot of people on each ranking of the scores. You're very reliable at 102 and 103 because there's so many people who scored there and have that ranking. So you have a lot of people to compare it with. You can see that, in this test, we had 2,000 people who standardized it, who we used to create it. And we can see that, there's like 100 people with this IQ that we can compare to. But at the far end, at 145, maybe you have 20 people, to compare to. And that's much less statistically reliable. And that
Does anybody know what the most reliable IQ test is?
Depends on who you're asking. If you think you're
With the
within the average
largest N number.
Well, most tests, they do some fancy math to project beyond the statistical weight.
I'll just tell you the answer. I'll just tell you the answer, Dolds. It's the American ASVAB test. It's the Armed Services Entrance Test.
Who
Is it
who
still
people
heavily
determined
tested.
that?
correlated?
Sorry?
Who determined that that's the most? What did you say? The most accurate?
No, I said it's the. I don't think I said it was the most accurate. I might have. If I did, I misspoke.
You said
No,
it.
I don't
projected
remember what
the
you said.
furthest.
That's what I'm asking. I
You
don't.
said
It's
it
the
projected
longest-
the furthest.
Yeah, it's the longest running IQ test study ever.
Oh, okay.
Because the military had to. They like Jordan Peterson talked about this years ago, and I actually looked into it, and he's actually right. Like the military found out that you cannot train somebody under a certain IQ, which I think was like 70 or some shit like that. I can't remember.
No, it was 184. Underneath 84, there's no training you can do to make them profitable for the military. Like, it's better to
Yeah.
just not have them underneath.
I swear to God, it was
84.
lower than that, but we'll just go with 84 because
I think you're thinking about McNamara's morons during the Vietnam War. This guy McNamara, he took in like a few thousand clinically retards and tried to train them, and they took way longer and had a way worse casualty rate than average. Like,
Yeah.
that sort of proved the point that maybe we should stick above 84.
Yeah. It's really interesting how they came to the conclusion, because it's not like what you would consider a regular IQ test, but it's like I've taken, I can't remember which one of the clinical IQ tests. I can't remember which one I took. I was way younger.
WAIST, Welcher Adult Intelligence Scale, or WISC,
Might have been that one.
Welcher.
It's Weschler,
yeah.
Stanford Binet.
That one.
Those are
It was
the-
that one. I remember the
WIS,
Binet one.
The Stanford Binet.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I took that one years and years ago, like even before I entered into the military. And then I took the military one. I was like, wow, these are really, really fucking similar questions. Like really similar questions. So I'm assuming they did some cross-referencing and came up with their ASVAB test. But it's very accurate. It's accurate in the sense that they can predict very, very well what kind of a job you're capable of doing in the military.
Yeah. Or if you're able to work.
What job? Like, so there's some jobs that lower scores are just not able to do.
Well,
so
officers,
for example, I scored fairly high on mine. And so I had a bunch of different jobs open to me. And I had a buddy that went through a couple years later, and he scored lower, and the same job openings were not available for him.
But see, I wouldn't rule out that until I put the person in the job. Maybe he can do something.
It's not worth it, Jeff.
I would hate for this one test to close off
Jeff,
opportunities.
it's not worth it. This is the military. They go through hundreds of thousands of kids every decade. They don't have the time to do individual testing. Like, let's try out tanks.
But what I'm saying is an IQ is not the only way to determine if somebody's likely to be good at a certain job.
No, but it's the best one.
So
you're saying
it is the best,
but I'm not convinced it's the best.
Statistically, it's the best.
Well, because you're a data nerd. I like to look at. I like to evaluate people and get a sense of from the individual what they're capable of or not.
Yeah,
you got to go, Dole.
Instead of running them through these technocratic tools and having the machine say he can do this, he can't do this. Because you don't really know until they try to do the thing, and the machine's going to filter that out.
I do agree, Jeff, but when you're dealing with individuals, you can do that, but when you're dealing with group level scales, you can't. You don't have the time. When you're dealing with 10,000 new kids every month, yeah, sure. But I'm gonna go sleep now. So
all right.
Goodbye and
get some sleep, Doles.
Good night. Take care.
It's 2:30 in the night. So good night.
Yeah.
What were some of the jobs? Do you remember that your friend couldn't qualify for?
I don't, dude. This was over 20 years ago, dude. Actually, it was over, God, how long ago? It was 28 years ago. I wouldn't be able to remember.
Oh.
But it kind of goes to show, like, if you're horrible at math, they're not going to put you into a career field or what they consider an MOS without having that very, very important skill set. So like, I don't know. I'm going to just pull one out of my ass. So let's say that you're an artilleryman, right? You have to be fairly good at math on that. You have to understand graphs. You have to understand how they correlate with distance and time and windage and all this other stuff. So if you suck at math, that's not a job they want you in.
But if you suck at math, that's not a job you're probably going to want to go into in the first place.
I don't know. Maybe you wanted to, and you wanted to really bad because you thought it was cool as hell, and now you know that you're not capable of doing it. I went through the military with a guy that the only job that he was offered was sanitation. Yeah. Yeah, he was not a smart guy.
That's what's the next level up from sanitation? He couldn't do
I
that.
don't know, dude, but I know that's the
For like
lowest.
cook, mess hall or something. Oh man.
I don't
Well,
know.
at least the militaries they have a very low floor, and they're willing to keep in people at the sanitation level. I think that's good.
Well, I think it fairly accurately represents society in general because I mean you need food service providers, right? You need
Yeah.
people to work restaurants. You need people to work at grocery stores, right? And so I think the system naturally self filters for those. I mean, if you take me for example, a lot of people don't think mechanics are smart. I was a mechanic for 28 years, dude, and know a lot of mechanics, and they are
They're
some of the
way
smartest guys I
smarter than
know.
I am when it comes to
Yeah,
looking at machines and figuring them out.
yeah. So mechanics are generally high in spatial. Oh my God, why can I not think of the word? Um,
Visual
they can
spatial.
see things in their mind in three-dimensional space very, very well, and they can see how those things interact with each other. Otherwise, mechanically minded is what people would say, and so they can do that really, really well. But they don't succeed very well on things like abstract ideas, right? They just don't. And I can
Well,
tell you
speaking
from
of,
28
how are
years,
you? What's going on with you and your life situation, all
well,
that?
career wise, I can't discuss it, but it's going well.
Okay.
I was just sent to another state to support a program that I work for, and I was gone from home for 2 weeks, and that sucked, dude. Me and my wife, we've been together in November. We'll be ending we'll be beginning our 11th year together. And in the 10 years we've been together, we've only missed 4 days together. We've been together
Wow.
every day. And so this was 2 weeks without each other. It was pretty brutal. It was pretty
Oh,
tough. I like my wife a lot, so I like spending time with her, and so 2 weeks away from her really sucked. And I worked 13 days straight. By the time I got done, I had my standard 80 hours of regular time. I had 40 hours of overtime and I think 17 hours of double time.
this is in a
Yeah.
2 week period.
Yeah. This is
Okay.
in 13 days. 13 days.
Wow.
But part of that, and I have to be honest, part of that is travel time. I get paid travel time.
Okay.
So from the second I leave my house to the time I get to my hotel room, I'm getting paid.
Okay.
So I was just talking to my wife about it today, and I was like, I could go back to wrenching and make more money than I make right now, but I wouldn't be as happy. I love what I do. I really do. And I more specifically like working for, how would you say it? Uh, special kind of programs.
Okay. The ones you can't talk
And
about.
yeah, the ones I can't talk about. I really enjoy working for those because they're a lot of the times it's a lot of problem solving, and I
Yeah.
fancy myself a good problem solver. And you really have to know how to talk to other people because it's a very high stress situation all the time, every day. It's just high stress, and so you really have to know how to talk to people and not lose your cool. And um, it's just fantastic. I worked on the standard production side of things, working for one of the more popular airliners, and it was just boring as hell. Boring as hell. And so when I finally got into the program I'm in now, it was a breath of fresh air, and it's been a great time ever since. And yeah, so been pretty awesome. In about 6 to 7 months, I should be hearing back from that other job up in Washington. We'll see.
Oh, so that's still on the table.
It's still on the table. I lost out on the opportunity for the one that they were hiring.
Oh.
The one that they were hiring for. My lead actually got that job, and rightfully so. He's got way more experience than I do. But they want me to come up there and run one of their programs when
Same area.
yeah, same same
So
same area,
he'd
same.
be up here too then.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He's
nice.
just outside Cedro Woolley.
Okay. Yeah, I think
He's
that's
actually
one county
probably up
over.
there right now. So we'll see how it goes. He's my guy that's going to tell me whether it's going to be worth it or not.
Oh, so okay, he's your canary. Yeah.
Yeah, he's my canary in the coal mine, so to speak. But talking about intelligence earlier, that got me. It got me thinking a lot. I didn't think I was a very smart guy for a really long time, and it wasn't until I started reading and absorbing information and talking to people that were smarter than me that I realized I'm actually pretty smart. Like I had my IQ test from way back in the day, and it was a pretty good score. But life happens, and things, situations, and you just tend to not trust yourself as much.
Did you do well in school and stuff like
No,
that?
I
Were
did
there indicators
horrible.
there?
No, I was so bored at school, dude.
Oh, see
I was so bored.
that is an indicator.
Yeah, but it was funny because my daughter's super super smart. Like she was able to finish her master's degree in 6 years, and she got her IQ tested because I guess well, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think they kind of have to when she goes into her field. But she tested, she was 1 point below me.
Oh,
It was fucking cool. It's like, yeah, that's my kid. Love it. I absolutely love it. And she's so smart. I think it's wrong because I think she's smarter than I am. But
well, when you get that, when you're like 1 point apart, it's
it's
anybody's
absolutely
guess.
subjective. But
Yeah.
the point to that story, really, not the one with my daughter, but I think there's a lot of people out there that have the capacity to be much quote unquote smarter than they are today if they'd give themselves a chance. Like I realized how smart I was, and I decided to go back to school and do something with it. Like that's how much that clarity helped me envision a future for myself. And I went to school and I fucking killed it like I thought I would. You know what I mean? And so now I graduated with honors. I graduated top of my class. Uh, I got a great job. I've had nothing but stellar reviews, quarterly reviews, because we get basically, if you could call it this, we get audited once a month or once every quarter, and all of my reviews have been exceeds expectations. So
So they like you, or
um,
they recognize
yeah,
value when they see it.
yeah, I got a pretty good raise this year too, so I'm pretty happy about that. But I work with a lot of really smart guys, a lot of smart guys, and a couple of smart women too. There's not a lot of women in my field, so it's not
Right.
a derogatory thing to say. It's a fact. It's like I don't work with a lot of
Probably from
women.
interest more than
Period.
anything else.
Well, I don't know. Like the women that I've worked with, one of them, I wanted her to be my mentor. Unfortunately, she programmed out, and I wasn't able to, which really sucks because she taught me a lot just in a month. Like just in 3 months, she taught me so much. And I still remember something that she said. She's like, I am so glad you asked me so many questions. I love it. She's like, most people don't ask me any questions whatsoever. They just want to know how to do the thing and get a result. And I'm like, you're not like that. You want to understand the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, I thought that was kind of an obvious part of the job description. But apparently there's people that just want to collect a paycheck. And it's kind of sad to me. So, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't understand how smart they can actually be if they applied themselves. And some of it just starts with reading. And a lot of people today, you'll hear a lot of people. If you just talk to the random person, I think 9 times out of 10, you could ask them, hey, what books do you read? And they're like, I hate reading.
Nobody reads anymore.
No one reads anymore. I mean, not even audiobooks, which you're not even reading, you're just listening. It's like the
Right.
laziest form of reading there is, and they're still not capable of fucking doing that. It's ridiculous, and a good example of this is like me and my wife, we both listen to audiobooks, and there was one audio book, and I've mentioned this book numerous times. I think on this podcast, on others, is Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay's book, How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Oh yeah.
Both of us read that, and our conversations about ourselves and our marriage, like the quality of our conversations skyrocketed when we understood how to talk to one another. And now we'll be like, oh, you're doing the thing in the book. And so we'll recognize that the other person's doing the thing. And we'll go along with it because we know it has positive net results. And so we've learned how to communicate really, really effectively that way. And we already communicated really well before that. And it just took our relationships to another level. So it's like, if that's what one couple can do just by reading one book, what do you think you could do by reading 10? Like, it's insane, you know? And I've been accused of being on here and being a know-it-all, and I get it. But
Who accused you of that?
one of the trolls did.
Oh.
But I get that fairly frequently. And it's just like, you know what? If you read a fucking book, maybe you could have something in this fucking conversation rather than looking like
Yeah, well, you're probably getting it
dipshit.
from people that don't read or are not intelligent. 'Cause
Absolutely.
most intelligent people are not going to say you're a know-it-all.
Most people who read or have some kind of investment in education, they don't say that. They never say that. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Because they're interested in learning.
Yeah.
It's people who have this ego where they walk around feeling like they're the baddest motherfucker in the room all the time. And then they enter a room with a bad motherfucker and realize they're not as bad as they thought. So it's a problem. You know, one of my friends, this dude is off the chart smart. And, you know, I was talking to him one day and he's like, dude, do you have a problem talking to people? And I'm like, you know, occasionally, sure. And he's like, dude, I can't talk to normal people. I'm like, why, dude? He's like, I get so fucking frustrated because A, they don't read, and B, they don't know what I'm talking about. And so trying to talk to people is really, really difficult because the things he wants to talk about are complicated. They're interesting. They're fascinating. They're things that you have to understand intellectually to be able to hold even a remote conversation in it. You know what I mean? And so he's just, there's like a handful of people that he really ever talks about. He talks about anything even remotely complicated. And most of the time he bows out of conversations because he knows he's going to overrun it. And I find that sad because I think he should talk more.
It's hard for really smart people to find other people to talk to. Like on a very satisfying level.
You know, well, and you know, I've met some people who have said themselves that they weren't very smart, and they might not have been. I'm gonna take them on their word, but they read and they loved reading, and they always had something insightful into the conversation. They always had really interesting outlooks or perspectives on things, and it's like, I think you're probably smarter than you're giving yourself credit for, dude. You know? And so I think in measuring intelligence the way that we do, I think it has its purpose, but I think it's missing out on so much of the elegance and the beauty that is the individual that we tend to overlook.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. That's the whole debate you saw between us was started with me trying to say that.
My honest opinion is you guys were talking at each other. You weren't listening to each other.
I was trying really hard to understand.
I could see it,
but I still don't get it. It gets very fuzzy for me at that level, and I know that's the level that statisticians and educational psychologists work off of. But that doesn't mean that I understand.
Well, I don't think Dolb's is wrong either. I think Dolb's point was just as valid as yours. That's why I think that you guys were talking at each other. And that's where a lot of the conflict came from. And I don't want to say conflict necessarily, but the argument came from. Because he's right on a lot of levels. I mean, statistics is you can take this study, let's say, and you can pluck a random person out of a group, and you can be relatively confident that person will match the outcome of the statistical study. That's really all that it is at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
it's probability.
But it doesn't tell you anything about the micro level.
Yeah,
Because your statistics, they feature the macro level
yeah,
perspective, or the what do they call it? The oh my god, more fucking words are going out the window today. But anyways, yeah, they don't tell you anything about the individual.
Mike,
So Mike,
how smart are you, or how smart do you feel?
Well, the thing with me, I guess, how do you explain this? I guess the best way to IQ tests are very selective, like he was saying earlier. It doesn't always. Some people are deemed as geniuses, and some people are. That you ever heard the term "you're the dumbest smart person I've ever met"? You ever heard that
Yeah,
term
me.
in the
Yes, I've
past?
heard it many
So
times.
there are
Said it to
people that,
myself.
but there are people that are on paper very intelligent on paper, as in results of a test. If you ask me, the most intelligent people can think on their feet and can adapt to any situation thrown at them. Chaos situations, trauma situations, when somebody can think on their feet and be calm and collective and help people or help themselves in the most craziest situations, I think those people have a level of intelligence that we can't understand. I'd rather have one of those people that are calm on their feet than some person that can recite me Shakespeare. I mean, I'd rather have one of those people.
Because that Shakespeare was knowledge based, so anybody can
There you
cram
go.
their head with an amount of knowledge. And then the other type is like
Smart.
improvisational and adaptability. So you're right. There's different types of what we could call intelligence,
Jeff
and I don't think a
and
test is
Steve,
going to capture all of
yeah,
them.
and yeah, sure. And they always would say that this person is not book smart, but they're street smart, and
Yeah,
it's basically just someone that can adapt to what's going on around them. I think there are people that have never made it big, that have never made six figures, that have never been a CEO, that are more intelligent than a president because their intelligence is in different areas of the way their brain works.
yeah. Also, there's this study that the smartest people do not make the best CEOs. There's like an optimal
Mhm.
IQ for a
yep.
CEO, and it's somewhere to the right of the middle of the curve. But then once you go too far to
Sure.
the edge of the curve, you move out of the skill set necessary to lead and
You,
communicate with
you know,
ordinary people or whatever. And so
This,
CEOs are not, they don't do their best when they're too smart. There's a
when you're
sweet
super smart,
spot.
you have this thing called decision paralysis. And you're seeing so much information that you're incapable of making a decision, where someone who's street smart or quick on their feet, they can be like, okay, they're going to take a really quick purview of the information. They're going to make a decision right then and there. They're very action oriented.
I'll
Where
give you.
those, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'll give you a great analogy. You'll have a sergeant first class or a staff sergeant that will retire with the respect of everyone he's ever served with. Then you have a general that's a complete moron. So what I'm trying to say is that certain people, I think, get promoted for reasons that they are dullards. They don't see what's going on around them. They don't speak up. They go along to get along. That people ascend to these levels of acceptance on paper, but I think some of the smartest people are, meat and potatoes, salt of the earth people. Because once again, gentlemen, their life experiences taught them how to react with these different things. But when it comes down to the smartest people in the world, Einstein was a patent clerk. The master mathematician in India, I think he was unemployed for a while. Like these are the smartest people in the world. They're not Elon Musk. They're not, the president of the United States, but they have such an intelligence. I think intelligence is almost impossible to read because I think it comes from different factors of your life. You could be smart in one point in your life, and you could be dumb in
Yeah.
another. So I'm not to over talk. And Steve, I've never been on a panel with you. I have a problem where I start over talking, so I have to kind of take it down a little bit. But no,
Okay.
yeah, it's just but the question of
There's a lot of that
intelligence,
around here.
right? Where does it come from? How do you gauge it? I think is almost you have to be almost a genius to even be able to read it. Like to read some, like, how do you figure out this person's smart, this person isn't smart?
I mean, I know it
When
when
I
I see
took
it.
into,
I could tell a really intelligent work
yeah,
of literature or a really intelligent
sure,
scientist or mathematician. Like I know, or even somebody on a panel that's speaking on a topic. I can tell when somebody's doing
yeah.
it with intelligence and or more intelligence than others, etc. But without necessarily
And you know
having to
what?
pinpoint exactly what it is.
It's very funny because we talked about this, and Steve, we talked about this. We talk about this all the time. We talk about energy. People give a certain energy out, and people always make fun of other people for changing their speech patterns. But I think when you slow your speech pattern down and you start to listen, because when we're over talking, we're not listening. We're not taking
Yep.
information in. We're just giving what our
I
point of
am.
view is. But
Yeah,
doing it
I
right
think the
now.
smartest people I know are the best listeners.
That's it. That's it. But how hard is it if you have a hyperactive brain, Steve? How hard is it to stop and listen? It's
It's
almost
incredibly difficult.
impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, like I so for me, it's really difficult. But I think I've done a pretty good job of training myself to shut up and listen a lot. Um, but it's tough because it's situational too. If I'm at work,
Yeah.
it's not the same thing. If I'm at home, I can do it perfectly fine. If I'm in a social event where I'm at a party, I can do it just fine. But something happens when I go to work and that light switch is turned off, and I don't have access to that level of patience anymore. And it's really weird. I'm
Oh,
working on
interesting.
it. Yeah, I'm
Because
working
I've
on it.
always found you to be a great listener,
That's
at
because you're
least
meeting
on
me
the
socially.
panels and stuff.
Exactly. It's Jeff, it's in person. It's different like on social media where like we kind of are subdued to a certain point, but like people like I think, and I'm reaching, I don't know you, Steve, but people like me and Steve have a certain personality. I think I'm only reaching that when we come into a room, we take over. We just take over. And the problem is that it shows you as an arrogant a-hole sometimes, but also it shows you as the fun of the party. It shows you as someone trying to help other people. So you could be the most powerful person in the room, but try to motivate other people. And that's, I think, what a teacher does. A teacher helps you kind of motivate yourself and get going. But it's fascinating. The one thing about YouTube, I said this, I think to Jeff a few months ago, the greatest mistake I've ever made was coming on YouTube, was ever even logging on. My greatest mistake.
But you've also said how much you've learned
I know.
and
But
grown
the
from it.
reason why, Jeff, is ignorance is bliss. When you
Oh
don't
yeah.
know, then you're happy. When you're in oblivion, you're happy. When you start
Yeah.
to see the bad sides of yourself and other people, it starts to eat at you. And I think that it's hard. And it's funny because me and Jeff talked about this, and people on spectrums and things like that, it's just their mind always is working. It's always racing. It's always trying to formulate some kind of
Yeah.
decision. And I think it's a restless mind. It really
Yeah. I
is.
don't know
But
what it's like to have a second of stillness in my head ever.
it's wild.
So to comment on what you said, Mike. No, I'm not like that. So when I come into a room, if I don't know what's going on in there, no, I'm quiet as a church mouse, and I'm observing. I'm an observer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until I get a feel for the room that I start to open up.
Mm. I'm the opposite. I come in firing at all cylinders.
Yeah, you're the
Without
guy I'm
even knowing
looking
what's
at when I
going
go.
on.
And you know what? And Steve, sometimes I look like a complete idiot, and sometimes I look like the funnest guy around. Oh, this man, Mike's great. Oh, he's fun as hell. And then sometimes like that guy's annoying as shit. Like so it's it's
Yeah.
perceived it's perceived differently. But I'm trying to learn how to be a better listener. I'm trying. But at least I have enough.
Think you do. I think you do
Yeah,
okay. You,
Jeff,
you
I
follow
hold back.
conversations well enough.
Jeff, if you see me on other platforms, Jeff, I am literally on my best behavior here. Like I can flip out on
I
people.
believe that. I do
Yeah,
believe
like
that.
so, and because Jeff instills a control and a stillness in me because I look to him as free counseling. It's free. I don't even give him. It's free counseling.
I don't free
But
counsel you.
yeah, but it's one of those things where he kind of lets you rant and lets you look at your own actions. And I think, Steve, that's a good thing when you go to a panel that's neutral, that lets a
Yeah.
little bit of drama, lets you expose yourself. I think it's therapeutic. But Steve, I don't know if you've been to different platforms. You'll go to different channels or different genres, and it's literally like World War V. Like, forget 3 and 4. It's already past those wars. It's
Well, I've been to those.
it's
I'm a
bombed.
YouTube veteran at this point.
Yeah, it's
I have my
But
own channel.
yeah.
I've done a lot of stuff for men's mental
Oh
health.
yeah, let me put
as
it in the
well.
chat too. If you haven't checked
Um,
out Steve's channel, give it a
Yeah,
give it a
I'm
look.
published in a couple of different places, including
Yeah.
the Journal of Free Black Thought, which is interesting because I didn't tell
And now,
anybody at work
Jeff,
that I am.
Wait, let me finish.
yeah, Steve, just
Yeah.
Steve, just by your picture, are you like in a rural area like Washington State or like Oregon or something like that? Are you like a naturalist?
no.
You like to hunt and fish and stuff like that?
I don't hunt, but I do fish. I actually live
Okay.
in a desert state. Technically, it's a desert
Okay.
state. I live in Utah.
Okay.
That picture that I'm in right there is actually my wedding day, and that's up in Wyoming, where me and my family do a lot of camping, a lot of fishing,
Gotcha.
and that's where we spent our wedding at. But
Awesome.
we're looking at moving to like one of the northwestern states because we love the mountains.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Plenty of those.
I was
here.
just born and raised here and in Idaho, and so it's just kind of where I
Mhm.
stayed. But now we're looking at my job is affording me the opportunity to move somewhere else, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, Steve, I grew up in New York. I grew up in the city in Queens, and then I moved to
yeah.
Virginia. I grew up in Virginia in my 20s, and I've been in Virginia, but then I married a girl from Tennessee. And I'm telling you, the happiest I was ever in my life was in the Smoky Mountains, up in the mountains. It's just,
Oh yeah.
you can't even explain the difference,
Well,
when you're up.
it's like I'm an atheist, but when people say I'm going to church and they mean they're going to the mountains, I get it.
Oh,
It's totally
yeah.
I
different.
totally fucking get it.
Me too. Steve,
Totally
you
That's
had
just
a
a-
real life racist
Yeah.
come on the other day.
Oh no shit.
Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah, Steve,
You've-
he was out of pocket, bro. He was out of pocket.
That
And
bad, huh?
yeah, it was me.
The real kind, not
Yeah,
the.
oh yeah.
the
I mean, talking
modern,
about Steve
imaginary
dropping
kind.
N bombs every 15 seconds. He was dropping N bombs. It
Wow.
was wild. Yeah.
That is crazy that
But he was
someone's got the
also
balls to
drunk
do that in
too,
this
so
day and
I'd have
age.
to catch him sober to really get
Yeah.
a
Oh,
sense
dude,
of-
no. You don't. No. The best type of person wouldn't say that when they were shit faced.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not buying that one either.
But we had so much. If you go back and watch it, Jeff, was it like 3 nights ago? I think it was like a 3 night ago stream.
Yeah, something like that. 2 or 3.
Yeah, so Steve, if you watch it, you had a couple panel veterans up there, like me,
Yeah.
Joe, and Helena was up there, and we literally tried to walk him down. Like we didn't, like we had every right to it. Like we had every right to attack him and make the stream like a crap show, but we were like trying to help the guy so bad. And he just kept doing it over and over again. And then he's like, yeah, because I'm Sicilian. And me and Helena are like, oh no. Like, we renounce you, like we renounce you. But he just,
That's crazy.
But I found talking to him, I kind of hit him on a couple points. He talked about jail. I asked him if he was, touched in jail, and he got all bent out of shape. And then he was talking about, what else was his other point? I can't
I
remember
think
what.
the racism came from jail. Whatever happened in jail,
Yeah,
because he
yeah.
wasn't racist before.
Yeah.
When he was younger. It was
I asked
That
him,
would
acquired
not surprise
racism.
me.
Basically
it's kind
asked
of
him if he
forced
was-
racism up there.
I asked him if he was touched. I said butt broke, basically, if he was taken in jail, and he flipped out. Ah! He went crazy. And it's just like,
Oh boy.
that was a trauma point, it sucked, so maybe he hates people that aren't his color because of something that happened to him in his own personal experience. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. You can't speak for every single person,
Yeah, that's rough, dude. I'm surprised you let him stay on, Jeff. But
Oh, yeah.
I think I understand what was going on.
He was making an effort to have a good faith conversation. He
Yeah.
really was. My biggest issue with him was he was sloppy drunk
Yeah,
more than
No,
anything
yeah.
else.
it'd be great
the-
though. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the thing I was going to say is that it sounded like what you guys were doing was analyzing what he was saying and trying to get to the bottom of it, which is good because that's how you change people. That's how you turn people's minds, right? And it seems like that's what you guys were trying to do was
Yeah.
kind of get to the bottom of where this out of pocket racism was coming from, so that maybe you can fix it.
Yeah, it was super duper therapy, and he was hammered, and then he's talking about he was in prison, and he's got a record, and then he has a gun in his hand. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? So we
Hey,
tried.
Untrackable. Welcome back.
We talked. Hey, what's up, Track? We talked him down, and he lasted a while because Jeff was like, I'm gonna kick him, and me and Joe were like, no, don't kick him yet. And we weren't, we just kind of take him in circles. But yeah, it's you got to go back. Steve, you have to watch this. It's a masterpiece in trying to help
But
someone
it
out
was
of
also
control.
it was a very rare like you don't see that level
Yeah.
of racism hardly ever. So people that cry about this epidemic of racism, this
Yeah.
guy is an example of what actual racism is and just
It
how
is.
rare it actually
is.
is.
But the way he was handled with a level of like love. Like we were trying to help the guy. If you go back, you have to watch. I can't keep talking
Oh,
about
I
it.
mean, he wasn't a bad guy. He seemed like a
Yeah.
great person. He just
I
seemed to
just
have acquired some racism
Yeah.
from some experiences that he didn't really want to talk about.
He was in
Yeah.
crisis. He was in crisis, and I think the one thing I said to Jeff was, Steve, I said I hope he goes back and rewatches it and then kind of comes back and is his normal self. That's what I
We
said.
might see him again.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I
I'd like
do
to see
have to
that.
wrap up because I have to get to bed. I'm a working boy now,
Gotcha.
and so do y'all have anything you want to wrap up with, Steve?
Not at all.
Not really, man. Other than thanks again for always letting me on, man.
Oh yeah, I enjoy when you come on. You add a lot. I appreciate
That's right.
knowing you.
Well, Steve, it was great to meet you. I hope to see more of you in the future. And
Yeah.
this is a great platform for people to come up and just have a conversation. We fight once in a while, but it's a good platform to come up and just talk.
Steve does men's mental health. He does a men's mental
Yeah.
health channel, and we used to be part of a men's mental health group, and a lot of what this channel does grew out of the panels and Zooms that Steve and our little group used to do. So Steve's
Jeff,
kind of been here from the beginning.
Steve, I want to
Put
mess
his
with Jeff a
stamp
little.
on it.
I'm going to mess with Jeff. So, Jeff, you told me backstage one time, was Steve one of the guys that broke your heart? Is that one of the guys that broke your
No,
heart?
it was.
I'm joking. Steve, I'm joking.
No one
I'm
really. I
joking.
broke my own heart. Nobody really broke my heart. I did it to myself.
I'm totally joking. He was hooked on your goatee the first time he saw you, Steve. He was hooked.
But
no,
it's
it's
all good.
It's a
But
total.
Steve is one of those married with kids people that would make a very nice daddy to somebody.
Oh, I
Hey,
would, and I
But for
have.
that.
But Steve, at least you have that in your repertoire. You have that in your resume. Steve, possible daddy. So you never know.
Oh, it's not possible. I have been one. It's all good.
Hey now. But yeah. So look. Jeff is
He
blushing.
turned red,
Look.
dude, on screen. Turned red.
I was in the sun today. I got some sun.
Steve, you're making Jeff blush. Look at him. He's like,
we love you, Jeff.
Jeff breaks out the fan, the church fan. He starts doing the church fan.
Right? Where's your pearls at, Jeff?
I got my beads.
Clutch them.
Clutch your beads.
All right.
Jeff
my
knows a lot
goodness.
about me, so that's why he's probably laughing.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's funny the people that Jeff get along with and consider him YouTube family. We should never be friends, but Jeff has a way to transcend into attracting people that would never.
I'm a node.
Like,
I'm a next. That's my whole
Yeah.
life. Everywhere I go,
yeah.
people try to figure out how they all know each other. It all ends up being through me.
That's it. It's the power. It's the power of the antlers. And it's funny because when Jeff didn't have his antlers, his viewers kept dropping, and the antlers came back. And it's like electricity. It's like zzz, like little lightning bolts coming out. So the antlers are what it brings. But gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate you, Steve. I will definitely subscribe to your channel. And Jeff, I'll always be back. No matter how much Jeff beats on me, I'll still come back.
Yes.
All right. And
I'm
if you're looking
afraid
at my
that's
channel,
true.
go to the playlists, and there
Yeah,
will be one that's more about Steve, and that's where most of my work was done.
got it. And
I actually did very little on mine.
Steve, when you have time, go back and look at the stream that me and Jeff were telling you about, where the guy came on, the crazy guy. You have to watch it. It's super interesting. It's a super
No, I'm
interesting
going
thing
to.
to watch. Yeah. So right on. Well, thank you, Jeff. You out of here?
Yeah, I got to get my little body to bed so I can get up at 2 in the morning and make it to work.
Good
Well,
Lord,
Steve.
bud.
Yeah,
I'll
Steve
probably take
salute.
tomorrow off. I usually do on Sunday, but I'll
Yep.
be back on Monday for sure.
He says it.
Camera's
Jeff
off,
will
but I'm
say
saluting.
that. Jeff will say that, and then like 7:15, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go live. He does it every.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Just
You
don't
know
don't
what?
look for me tomorrow. If you see me,
Yeah.
it'll be a surprise.
Jeff's like, I got a sweet lumberjack shirt on, lumberjack shirt. I'm gonna go on live. It is what it is.
Yep.
But no, I'll see you gentlemen later. Thank you for having me up, Jeff.
We'll see you
We
Take
guys.
care,
love you.
Mike. Have a good
We love
weekend.
you, Jeff. We love you, Jeff. We'll see you later.
I'm working on being able to say those words. I've, I've gotten it out once or twice. Because I want to mean it when I say it. I mean, I could say I love y'all, but I want to mean it. Not that I don't mean it, but I want to say it with sincerity. You have a TV on?
Oh, am I still on? Oh crap.
Yeah, you're still on. Oh, that was another panel.
Thankfully, I'm clothed. No, just the TV was up in the back.
Yeah, that's what I
No,
had.
no,
Because
it's
I'm
all.
like, oh, I hope nothing copyright comes through.
No, you're fine. Yeah, it's just a TV in the background. No, everything's good. It's
All
good to
right.
see you, man. I came up
Yeah.
late, but it's good to see you. I didn't see it. Did you and Dolbez have a fight or anything?
No, we didn't have a fight. We had a
Okay.
passionate discussion about IQ test.
Yeah. It's just he needs to dull it down on Norway. We've already heard all his 100 facts on Norway. Okay, you're Norwegian. Stop. No, it's all true. I'm just kidding. He's a good kid. He's a good kid.
Yeah,
He
I
really.
like Dopus.
Yeah.
He's
But
another
no,
OG.
yeah, he's an OG. But I will definitely see you later, Jeff. Have a great night. I'll see
You
you later,
too,
my
Mike.
friend. All right.
Take care. We'll see you later. All right, that is. You want me to kick you? There you go. All right, that is it for me. I'd love to stay. I hate having to cut these streams short like I've been having to do lately. But if I don't, I am it's very hard for me to get my day going the next morning. So I have to, it's discipline. This is what you're seeing me do is discipline. So I'm going to be responsible, get to bed at a healthy hour. And I'm on tomorrow is day 7 of my 9-day stretch. And then I'll have a brief little weekend where I can do longer streams and during the day. So that's coming up. As I said, look for me on Monday. I probably won't be out tomorrow. And um, I'll see you then. Have a great rest of your weekend. And I love you guys. I I have to make that an entire topic, this love thing. You know, the Greeks have 9 or 11 different words for love. So I don't know why I struggle with it so much, but I am trying to become a more loving person. Everyone knows that. And I am very attached to all of you. I do mean that. Um, I just have, I've had some, I think what it is love has some negative associations with me. So it's not something I can give wholeheartedly without mixed feelings about it. So it's kind of a little, I don't know. I don't want to get too deep with it. Do know that I do appreciate all of you and probably love most of you. So I think that's pretty good. I think I did pretty good. Let's leave it there and keep rocking on. Hail yourself. Have a good Sunday, and I will see you. I'm still hearing a TV. Oh, my YouTube's running. That's why. All right. Good night, everybody. I gotta go to bed. Take care.